Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 30 of Into the Rift. My name is Daniel Sifa Dracos. I'm sorry I've been away for so long as your host, but I'm back now,
Yeah, you're
and I'm
making me
joined.
host instead. Badly.
Dugan, you did a great job. I was proud of you. You made me
Fuck
proud.
off. Fuck off.
But now I'm joined by Nugan, who I've just introduced due to his rude interjection into my intro. Thank you, Nugan.
More like
your
honest.
Dota shirt, your sass. Getting tired of it, quite frankly.
What's wrong with the Dota
But-
shirt? I've worn Dota
Well,
things
but-
on this show like 4 times already.
All right. There are other guests, Nugan. It's not all about you. Also joining me, now officially a member of the China Talk panel, writer for LOL Esports, writer for anyone and everyone if she wants to be. It's Emily Rand. That was the worst intro ever. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Hi all. I'm
You write
sick.
for a
so
lot of people, and I couldn't
please.
remember if you wrote for anyone other than LOL Esports. So I just.
I write for
The
Team
Score.
Liquid, and I also write for. I did some freelance work for the Score. So.
Well, excellent. So the
Oh,
score.
and also forgive me because I'm sick, and I might sound kind of funky. And this is why I am actually presented as my favorite player of all time in League of Legends. I'm not kidding. That's not a joke.
I don't know who he put as your picture. Who is your favorite player of all time? in
It's
League of Legends?
Score.
It's
PG
Score.
Wolster.
My God.
I think once a week Emily reminds me how much she loves him.
Okay.
And I made a bad joke
horrible.
about his jungling
All right.
one time.
You with
She
your Dota shirt, her with her score fandom.
and
All right.
she threatened to write me like a
Well-
20-page dissertation on my score's good, and I'm like, I was joking.
I still might write that.
All right, you brought.
dissertation.
No. Emily's coughing. She can't contain herself. Nugan, you can't keep it on track. Our final guest, our newest addition after trying and endlessly to get this gentleman on the show. It's going to be Shakarez, now officially head coach for Cade Stars. Did you know you're the second coach for Cade Stars we've had on the show?
Oh, you've had Ivil in here?
Yes.
Ah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like 10 episodes ago or something like that. I don't know.
It was a little bit ago, but I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to hear what you think about your team. And now that we've introduced everyone after a little bit of length there, the first
2
thing I want to talk
minutes?
about. Yeah, it's longer than normal. It's usually like 30 seconds, and we dive in. Sass, come on.
He's trying to go Thorin mode.
Hold on, we're
Yeah.
esports now. Now we're esports. Now we're talking about esports. All right, CB Law, week number 1. One of the most important sets for this, I guess, for the first week is going to be INTZ versus Cade Stars, and Cade coming out on top. Yay, Shaka.
Yay.
Maybe sad face Emily because I know she really loved this team. But Revolta obviously is a big factor between these teams. We saw the announcement that Revolta was swapping over to Cade, and that's a pretty big change, at least from what I remember from what we've talked about in the previous CBLOL season. So for everyone here, what are your thoughts on Revolta, and how has this affected both INTZ and Cade?
So this was the big storyline coming into CBLOL because of this roster swap. And personally, and obviously I'm going to be biased since I coach Keed, but I followed him since his time with CNB, and I think that right now I can safely say he's the best player in the region. In his role, there's no one, he's unparalleled in his role, and he brings a lot to any team that he may join. So it was a very good move for Keed getting one of these players. Sure, they lost Mylon, but especially in the current meta, having a good jungler is definitely better than having a top laner. And this is not to take merit from Lecco, because Lecco's been doing much better now with Keed. So I think it was a really good move by Keed, and it definitely left INTZ in a very weak spot because they had to do a role swap. So I was actually pretty scared coming into this game because I was hired just a few days before. I didn't have much time to prep. I had my birthday in between. Meanwhile, I was supposed to get on a plane, but there were some complications. Had to do remote coaching, still doing remote coaching. So I was kind of scared for this, but I'm glad it went well for us. But yeah, I'll let Emily talk as well, because I know she has a lot to say about this move as well.
Well, I think, I guess I would not disagree with the assessment of Revolta. I think that I wish that this match had not been one of the first in the week. I wish it hadn't been in week one. I understand why it was based on the previous final, based on obviously the hype. Like, it's Revolta. Like, now he has to face his old team. Like, his old team wants to beat him. That kind of. So like the narrative was definitely very primed going into this match. However, for both teams, I feel like they're both obviously weaker than what they were at the end of the previous season. So to me, Cade, watching them last year, watching them last split, and watching them now, I don't feel like even at their strongest iterations that they've ever really been a team, like a unit of 5. And so I think the challenge for them going through this season is to see that if they can actually work on a lot more like macro strategy and working as a unit, which is actually something that I think INTZ did have down a lot better. And then talking to that team following MSI, I think they learned a lot. And obviously the absence of Revolta makes a huge difference. But I do think that team will be able to respond and kind of grow. It's very hard for me to criticize them individually, because a lot of the things I think that you saw from specific players on INTZ in this first set, you wouldn't necessarily see towards the end of the season when they're a lot more comfortable as a unit. So I was sad about that, I think, because obviously a roster change like that and then the role swap on INTZ, it's going to make an impact on both teams. And Cade, again, they had a new top laner and they had Essa in the AD carry role. So that also makes a huge difference. It's new players are just getting used to it. So Cade won, I think, based on the fact that their players were just a lot more comfortable within the game. I think that would be slightly different, and you'd see a lot better of a match. And like it might seem that I'm holding really high standards for both of these teams, but I feel like they've both earned that. So, the only other thing I'd want to touch upon with Cade is I really appreciate that Cade seems invested in giving Lecco some sort of resources.
Yeah. So he doesn't get to be Brazilian Dyrus
I
anymore.
remember you telling me about that.
It was pretty much the same thing, and I'm not criticizing Glecko. He obviously did have his faults when he was on Pain, but truth is he never got any resources. So in a way, it was a very similar situation to Dyrus, where the team would just leave him to die all the time and leave him to the wolves. And I feel like he's the kind of player that can definitely do things when he has resources. So we've been playing around with that, and we've been playing around with multiple strategies that involve him having or not having resources. And it's I think it's good for a team to have multiple strategies where snowballing top is an option, not going top is also an option. I feel like that's very important, because if you rely on one or two players, and if those players do not show up, it's very problematic. So being able to distribute resources differently according to the game and the composition is very important, in my opinion.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because like when it comes to the dynamics of your team and how they participate in the team's victory, you need to be flexible, because if it's always going to be the same 2 people winning or 3 people winning, then they just have to target them, and then it's easy as that. And then they're put into a situation that they're not used to, and that's just way too easy.
One of my big questions for you, Shaka, with coaching this team so far, and assuming you won't always be remote coaching, how do you feel about the relationships that are present on Cade? Do you feel like Cade already has good interpersonal relationships as a team?
Yes, very. To remind you that three of these players had already played together in a different lineup. They played Leko, and Takeshi played on CNB back in 2014.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
went to the finals. They
Yeah, they
lost
went to the
against,
finals and they
Kaboom.
lost to Kaboom. And they were a very impressive lineup. Their bot lane wasn't too good. I think Alex at the time was not the same Alex that is now, and I recall that their AD carry Mana was not too good. I think he was the weak point in that team. But yeah, three of these players had already played together, so there's a lot of synergy there already. Revolta knows his solo lanes from past experiences. Loop had already played with Takeshi. Obviously, they were both on Keed, and Eza is kind of the new guy, right? But I'd say the team gets along super well. They're always playing around with each other and fooling around, so they're very friendly. So yeah, they're definitely five friends, which helps a lot with the mood of the team. They're not afraid to criticize each other's play, from what I've seen so far. They get into discussions sometimes, but it's always it's not aggressive, It's not like they're criticizing, but it's not like destructive criticism. They try to they're not at each other's necks, It's a good so far from what I've listened to, because I'm on TS. It's been a good, they have a good relationship with each other. So I think in that sense, it's a really good plus, and definitely something that will help us in the long run.
So, do you feel like there's any real implications to draw from this first set of games as to far as the rest of the season go, or is this kind of just we're glad that Cade won, but I mean it's just one set of games?
So I was actually expecting a split set. I knew that I was fairly certain that INTZ couldn't take two games off of us, so it was either going to be a 1-1 or a 2-0. From how I felt about the team on scrims. I also helped INTZ on IWC, so I know their champion pools more or less. So we prepared a good draft. I spent several hours with the team prepping the draft on TeamSpeak, so we could go confident into the games. But I feel like it's, as Emily said, I kind of hate to see this matchup happen in week one, because INTZ are definitely not at their strongest point. They're going to need time for Jockster to find his place in the jungle. And I still believe they're a top team, especially when Jockster gets a bit more used to his new role, or old, depending on the perspective. And we are also kind of not at our strongest point. I think in certain aspects, we're still lacking a lot in terms of macro play. I don't know if you saw the games, but game 2 was fairly okay. I think we cleaned it and closed it out pretty fast. Game 2 was pretty horrible in terms of side wave management, and that's what I'm currently focusing on scrims. I'm trying to help them focus how to play the map better, because in terms of team fighting, they're very strong. They're very good. Somehow, whenever we have bad team fights, they manage to turn it around. So team fighting isn't really an issue. The focus is always correct. So I'm really focusing on map movements and wave manipulation, which is something they really haven't mastered, and they need to do better in order to be a top team and to win the region and to eventually go to Worlds if things go well.
All right. So do you feel like there's some truth in Emily's criticism that you did not, or in the past, Cade has not functioned as a whole unit as far as a team, much more focused?
Yeah, for sure, and especially after Daydream and Emperor left, we had the statement from Mylon, basically kind of, I wouldn't say flame, but heavily criticizing its teammates, that they would keep things to themselves, and they wouldn't talk too much. They were kind of separated from the other 3 players. I definitely think that this roster can work very well as a unit, and I'm very excited to see how it works down the line.
All right. Well, I'm also excited to see once again. This time, I think we hopefully we'll have you back in the future too, so we can talk to you and see how things have changed and see if it all burns down or if this is just going to be an awesome new roster. Then things are going to work out. But moving away from INTZ and from Cade Stars, Pain Gaming and Kaboom Black also played this week, and Pain Gaming didn't 2-0 Kaboom Black. So I'm just gonna let Shaka, you and Emily talk about this because I mean I don't, as far as I know about Pain Gaming, I've compared them in the past as the CLG of BR.
Everything is the CLG of everything.
Yeah, it's because I'm a CLG fan and like most CLG fans were narcissists. But
can you relate then, Jen?
Yeah, well, but either way, Pain Gaming, Kaboom Black. I mean, what the hell? Okay, it's once again, it's week 1, so I don't expect you to make giant sweeping statements here. But I mean, what the hell happened? And I feel like this has some implications. Like INTZ versus Cade may not have had any implications, but Pain Gaming losing to Kaboom Black is a pretty big thing.
The reason why this is actually significant is because prior to the season starting, and this is additionally prior to the Revolta transfer. So I think part of it was that some people were underestimating the impact that Revolta has in a game in terms of how he directs the pace of play from the jungle. I think that's something that a lot of people don't think about necessarily when they think about what a jungler actually does, especially this year. Across the couple metas that we have seen in season 5, jungler's role is just really important. So prior to that, and even after that, people were saying that Pain Gaming was going to be the number 1 team in Brazil, following the Mylon transfer. Is obviously they released Lecco and they picked up Mylon from Cade Stars, and Mylon is an incredible talent in the top lane. And they went to XMA, and even though I won't say like XMA was like the most quality tournament ever.
Yeah, the full day delay. I was so hyped for that. God bless.
Yeah, and the having to follow Jockster and Dave, like so in the final. But anyway, yeah, they went to the final, and they looked pretty good. And in the against. When Revolta was on INTZ. And so people were saying, this is it. This is the iteration of Pain that's just gonna,
finally, after all these years,
go back to the top of Brazil, where they have not been since the IEM qualifier. And that did not happen because they lost to Kaboom Black. And what is significant about them losing to Kaboom Black is not to rag on Kaboom Black, but what happened to them in the offseason is that they lost their lost their top laner and they lost their mid laner. Now their top laner they replaced with Element, and I don't think that's necessarily if that's all they had to work with going into the season, that wouldn't be a problem. Yeah. However, they also lost their mid laner, and people may disagree with me on this, but I think the value of their mid laner was significantly underestimated by a lot of people in terms of what he did for that team. They were a 5v5 team fighting team. They never really had strong lanes. The idea was that they were going to kind of last through the early game because their lanes aren't the strongest, and they have they're passive. Like that's one of their huge faults. They're very passive in lane. But once they get to actually grouping for objectives, if they get good vision down, if they force you to fight on their terms, they're very strong 5v5 team fighting team. And they draft for that as well. So their new mid laner is Vash. He previously played for the team when he was under the ID You Look So Pretty, and then Pouring in their top lane. and he was one of their subs, so they didn't have to subtract points because he was already, Kaboom Black moved past that because you remember they started with the negative 4-point deficit, and Cade started with a deficit too for trading out one of their players one too many players this season. But their new mid laner is not as good as Goku. And when I say that, I'm not actually just talking about like mechanics or whatever, but I'm talking about what they do for the team. Goku saved his ults. Like if you watch him play Lissandra, it's the most obvious, but he saved his ults, he saved his CC, and all the chain CC that they were able to put down, a lot of the time Goku was their point person for that. And you take that out of the team, don't expect them to do as well, especially if they're team fight 5v5 based team. You don't. Like, you just don't. It takes time for a team like that to come together. And Pain
lost to that team. Yeah.
Lost to that team. And they lost by insisting on engaging them in team fights where
near walls.
So business engaging them in team fights. Like, it just, like, the absolute worst terrain choices. Why are you trying to engage against an Anivia and a Gnar in the red side, like at the red side blue buff?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why?
Yeah, and then near the wall in bot lane.
Yeah, like, you just don't do that. It's not smart. And I think first of all, they underestimated the Anivia pick. And then secondly, they just didn't choose.
They didn't respect Kaboom.
Places. Yeah, they just didn't choose good places for them to fight, and they just thought they'd be able to run them over. Now, in the second game, they did run them over because guess what? They stomped them across all 3 lanes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But it's really concerning that Pain is doing this in week 1 because unlike the other 2 leagues that we're going to talk about later, Brazil doesn't have a lot of leeway. And even though I would go across the board and say that the first week's games were really bad across the board, like, I was pretty harsh in terms of my assessment of Brazil this week, the actual competition and the level of play I think we're going to see at the end of this season is going to be unparalleled from what we've seen from this region. And Pain doesn't have room. They don't have a lot of wiggle room.
So
I agree.
It's kind of frustrating.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Shaka.
We were watching this game and talking on Skype, and it was hilarious because I wanted every team to draw, because my team got a 2-point deduction for doing three roster swaps. So I wanted everyone to draw so we could get like first place by the end of first week, which would be like the dream. It's especially since we got the 2-point deduction. And I was watching this game and I was like, Pain's gonna throw this, and Emily was like, nah, they've got this. And then that team fight near the blue buff happens, and it's like, I'm like, oh my god, Kaboom's gonna come back. And Emily is like, oh no, they still have a pretty good gold lead. I think they can still do this. And then they throw again and again and again. I'm like, oh my god, this is actually happening. It was so bad. Like, they didn't respect Kaboom at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was wrong of them. I actually, funnily enough, from the 2 drafts, I think Kaboom drafted much better second game.
Mm-hmm.
First game, the Anivia pick, I think the Anivia pick needs to come with some early game, and it was not the case. You need to have jungler that pressures early better. Sejuani was not it was Sejuani, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Sejuani. You needed something to pressure better early to help the Sejuani, and the Janna, it was Janna, yeah, Janna, didn't like it as well. I think you need something more aggressive to go with that Anivia. Somewhat of a more playmaking support to go with that Anivia, but I think it was actually a decent pick, and it works. And surprisingly, Vash held his own because we scrimmed both of these teams. So Pain is kind of random in scrims. Kaboom looked, I'm not gonna lie, they didn't look any good, and I was really expecting the 2-0. So I think Pain definitely didn't respect them, and they gave Kaboom a point, and which is good for us, obviously. But as Emily said, in a system where you're playing best of twos for 7 weeks, like when you toss one of these games like this, and you want to be like top two by the end of the regular split, it just can't happen. Because if you're tying games, basically, Payne could have used this opportunity in week one to be isolated in first place with G3X, especially since INTZ lost. It would have been a really good opportunity for them to rise in the standings, and they didn't take the opportunity. So, as Emily mentioned, it was a big mistake.
And this is one of the things that I think about this 2-game format too, is that you really like 2-0s are absolutely crucial. Like 1-1 splits all season. It's better to get swept and to sweep people back in exchange than it is to 1-1. Like 1-1 is pretty much the worst thing that can happen to you, right? Like it's nice if you lost the first game to get that one back, but really it's much better for you to sweep. Like you always are going to want to sweep, and the fact that a team with much more experience, like a roster that is functionally and for the most part the same, like dropping to a roster that, I mean, even last season, last season's interesting because Kaboom Black totally got screwed out of the standings because of the 4 points that they lost.
But they kept it, to your point, they kept splitting sets, and that did not do them any favors in terms of getting out of that that hole they dug themselves in.
And so do you think for Pain Gaming, do you think this is just them just underestimating Kaboom Black, a little bit of disrespect here, like not appreciating the strength that Kaboom Black could bust out, or is this Pain just like slacking off? Like
it might be a little of both.
Yeah, I was gonna say I want Nugan's opinion because he watched this with us.
Yeah, well, I wasn't fully paying attention because I was rolling like 300 egg rolls, so that's a story for another time. But when
I'm playing ARAMs with the rats.
Man in my show with the Dota shirt talking about rolling egg rolls and playing ARAMs.
Fantastic.
I love you.
I didn't say anything about the ARAM. Okay, I was saying anyway. I was saying like the parts I was able to watch was like I definitely saw those really bad team fights, the throw out the blue buff and like picking the fight against the wall of bot lane. If you're going against a team and they lost one of their most core central players, Goku, whatever, and then you go into that kind of game with that kind of draft, you have no, even if you think you're way stronger than them, and that doesn't mean you can just recklessly throw yourselves at the enemy team, just expect them to roll over and die. Like that doesn't make any sense in any kind of competitive game, from Brood War to whatever. Like they could have, like if it was Brood War and they had a really bad like build path or whatever, they scutter around, you throw yourself at them like recklessly, you will still lose, right? And that's just total disrespect. And they totally went like, I don't know, like something must have gone in their mind. Like we're not even going to think about where to pick fights, where to dismantle their team comp or anything like that. They just totally threw away a easy win or whatever they might want to think about it. So total disrespect, in my opinion.
Trying to resist making another CLG comment.
What?
You and your CLG comment.
Please, no more CLG analogies.
It's all I have. It's all I watch. It's all that I love. All right. Well, so in weeks to come, do you think that because is there a way that Pain can take this as a good thing? Like we lost early on. Now we like know that we need to get our shit together, that we need to improve. Because like a lot of times when teams like go into a tournament and lose in the first round or like lose a first game, like it keeps their ego from inflating. They're no longer they're going to be the best team in Brazil this season. I mean, they're the team that dropped a game to Kaboom Black in the first week. So is there a way that Pain recovers from this and comes back stronger, bigger, better, or is this like, oh God, Pain, like we're a little bit concerned about how you think about this game, and we're not really sure what you're gonna do?
I would hope that they evaluate that game and use it as a learning tool. Like it would be my hope, because that team has a really large amount of talent, and watching them last split as well, I feel like sometimes they didn't always know how to like use that talent as effectively as they could. And I hope that they can take this and be like, okay, here's what we have to do going into the season for us to be successful, because obviously like we can't underestimate any of our opponents. And I think that's true. Like I think like I did the power rankings, and it's literally like you could mix up the teams. If you told me that any one team took a game off of any other team aside from a few Cade matchups, I think that I would be like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Like I can see where the teams would even out. And it's just really concerning for the organization as a whole, in my opinion, I guess. Like I want them to learn from it. I don't want like all this talent to go to waste on Pain. Like no one ever wants to see that happen with a team. And like my interest in Brazil is just to make, like, I want the region to be stronger than what it is, right? So and Pain's a part of that. They've been one of the stronger teams in that region for years. And it's time, I guess, for the team to actually sit down and analyze what they need to do to win, because they really can't just rely on that kind of win lane, win game mentality anymore, I don't think.
So for me, from what I've seen in the past from Pain, they've been relying on the strategy for a very long time. Like looking back at pretty much every iteration of Pain, and it doesn't feel like that has I mean, I think Mylon fits into that strategy better.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't think that that's a good strategy. Like I think the win lane, win game strategy is a relic of like just earlier seasons. But I think now that the talent pool is so developed across the world, it's just no longer acceptable to play the game that way. Like that, I think it was like Season 3 where Cloud9 came in and they copied the Koreans because they took objectives, and like all of NA was like, you take dragons after your kills? Kills aren't just kills? Like
you
don't
took
just
towers?
Like,
before 10 minutes? Damn.
And it feels like Pain is still like playing in that era. And sometimes they do show up and they have like solid strategy. Like every once in a while we'll see a game like that. But I don't know. I've just been disappointed in Pain. Pain is the team when Emily first got into Brazil, when Emily first got me into Brazil, like that was the team that I got excited about. And call me hype. But at the same time, it's not good enough that you're really good on Katarina. That sometimes pulls a ban, you know? Like it's not enough anymore. You can't just pick Katarina and like hope to God that they like miss position and don't ward a flank and you just get a pentakill. I don't know. I've been disappointed.
It works for Pain, and it will work for some of the bottom tier teams because they have such good laners. I think BRTT is one of, if not the best laning AD carry in Brazil. I definitely think his laning is really good. He really knows how to squeeze every advantage. Team fights, not so much. Team fights, I think he's outclassed, but his laning is very strong. Mylon obviously is known for being a carry top laner, so he likes his duels, he likes his 1v1s. And Kami is overall a good performer, and Surti likes to be in that bottom part of the map, usually, at least with the Lekko iteration of that roster. That's how it went. But it won't work with them. It won't work for them forever. But on the plus side, they have some time to figure that out and change their strategies around, because I think they face us last. They face Keed week 7, and they face INTZ week 6. So it's definitely going to be a very interesting ending of the split, of the regular split, because they have, I think, their 2 hardest games in the 2 last weeks, because meeting INTZ in the end of the season means that it's going to be hopefully an INTZ roster that has a Jockster who is playing well in the jungle again, who is used to his role, and Alox, who is used to playing with Mikau. And from there, I think it's going to be a really interesting end of season for Pain, and to see if they can pull off some good results. And until then, in these, so week 6, week 7, that leaves week 2, 3, 4, and 5. I feel like if they want to contend for top 2, since they just lost a game to Kaboom, they definitely need to win almost, if not all, the games, because they're going to have a very two tough weeks where we might have split games. We might have, let's say, they go 1-1 with INTZ and Cade. That means that they really need to win the games before to be in a good standing before they get there.
Definitely, and you know, already touched on how important sweeping can be, and for Pain. And here's the thing, and this is just to really just drive the nail in just a little bit more. Like when in the past, when we've seen teams that have had very strong solo lanes and very strong individual laners, teams with more established rosters, they're usually most successful in the early weeks. When we look at those kind of teams, like God damn it, CLG, you know, like they're known, like they had really strong early game, and that's how they snowballed their lead. And they do this every season, and they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it this season too. I'm sorry, it's like the team that I love, but
you set that up
perfectly.
You set that you set that up for yourself so far.
Yeah, you set that up.
But
with KT, it's okay.
But you see what
Let's
I mean,
move on.
right? But like early game or early season, teams like that always win out, right?
Yeah.
And then halfway through the split, they just shit the bed. And so for Pain to lose so early, that's what I
mean,
find.
you said CLG, but a better comparison would be SK, for example.
Yeah.
SK is a team that got figured out in the end of the season because they were playing pretty much the same style all the time. Forgiven kind of refused to play out of those
3
out of the Lucian Graves Caitlyn. So
and rated on Lulu, we give him Lucian Graves or Caitlyn, and we hope to God we can get something else.
Yeah, and then if N-rated doesn't go Lulu, we'll put him on Nami or Annie, and that works. But yeah, it was pretty much it. Snowball, they would. Forgiven is a fantastic laner, so they would get the advantages from there, and that's kind of how BRTT gets his advantages as well. And the rest of the map also played well. I'm forgetting his name. Freddy is a rock in the top lane. Fox held his own pretty well. He had Sven Skaren ganking for him very often, so it's kind of the same. I feel like it's very comparable to how this Pain roster usually plays, but I feel like we should move on.
Yes, that's fair. I agree. I wanted to cap it. Thank you for bringing in SK. Yeah, I think that people get that we're disappointed in Pain. It might have been the first 100 times we've said it, but we said it a couple more just in case. So the final set this week that we're going to talk about for CB Law is CNB versus INTZ Red or Red. And Emily, you said that this was the series for you personally to watch for the week, and I wanted you to kind of go over that before we get any further. So why was this series the series worth watching?
And I've actually received quite a bit of crap for this. And it's okay, because I realize that what I watch League of Legends for is like, you know, they brought me on China Talk because I have weird opinions. And my weird opinion here is that when I watch INTZ Red and when I watch CNB, they have like glaring weaknesses and that's the thing you kind of have to know going into the game is that if you're looking for better execution, even INTZ proper losing in their 2 games, I feel like executed certain things better than these 2 teams did in their wins. They split the set, and the reason why I said to watch these games is because I feel like it gives you a really good overview of where kind of the rest of Brazil is at and how far they need to go in terms of understanding team compositions and how to execute them. And I thought it was interesting watching these 2 teams play each other because I thought it was going to be more of a mash of play styles. Usually INTZ Red is like very dive heavy, very, very, very aggressive. And their mid laner is usually their primary carry, and then their AD carry is more of a janitorial role for the most part. And they loved to, dive turrets. They love to be hyper aggressive, and they don't always know when to take the foot off the gas. And I thought it was really interesting that CNB was able to kind of dictate the pace of the first game, where they stopped that, and INTZ actually played Red played surprisingly patiently. I feel like the reason why I said to watch these games, like I said, it gives you a better idea of where the rest of Brazil is at, and it gives you. I feel like going into each of these games, the teams were trying to do something. Like they had a plan in mind, even if they didn't execute it well. I feel like they're trying to figure it out. Like you can see the wheels turning, and that's actually why I like this sloppier set as opposed to the other sets, if that makes sense.
I think I actually am inclined to agree with Emily, this being the best set, because to be fair, Keed played against an INTZ who's kind of lost because of the role swap, and they'll take time to adapt. Kaboom and Pain throwing game one, and then stomping lanes and winning from there game two, so nothing interesting there. G3X with Kaboom Orange was pretty horrible. I was thinking the first game would go to Orange, but it was like throw and then a counter throw and then the counter throw. It was horrible. Neither of the teams knew how to keep a lead, and then when the game seemed over, because Lulu had 900 AP and could keep the Jinx, could ult the Jinx and give her like 1,000 HP and shield her for another 1,000, is when I think it was like a fight near Baron where they lose it. It was just a weird game, and then game two, G3X actually played better. So yeah, if you remove all the sets, the only decent one, in my opinion, that was interesting in terms of gameplay was this one. Game one, the draft was really weird, in my opinion. I personally didn't like either team's draft with the way they picked the champions, specifically like the rotation, the first rotation, the second rotation of picks. For example, I'm looking at the draft right now. CNB picks Jinx into Urgot, which is definitely something you kind of want to avoid most of the time. It was weird, and then like INTZ Red brings out the Trundle, not expecting that one at all, and he didn't do much. But it was an interesting step, because CNB game one they played a really good early game, and this is something that I've seen from scrims as well. They tend to play their early game super well, and then if it works from there, they can actually take a win. And game one, they played it very methodically. I think Monte Cristo would be proud. It was very rotational based. They gained, I believe, like a 2-3K gold lead with like 1 or 2 kills. It was something like that.
The only thing they faltered on was early dragon control in that game.
Yeah, that was the only thing. Like, and then they kind of lost their lead mid game. I'm taking a look right now, but they controlled the game pretty well. Then they lost the advantage, but then via superior team fighting, they managed to take the game. But yeah, it was interesting because you saw CNB in game one that got a gold lead, lost it, but then managed to, via good calls and good decision making, get game one. And then I was actually expecting a 2-0 after this first game, because I see game one and I'm like, okay, CNB is looking pretty good. This might just be the 2-0. And then all of a sudden we see a completely different INTZ Red. They were very patient. They knew how to do engages. But I recall I rewatched the games, and it was like 2 or 3 team fights that they just traded 4 for none. So it definitely seemed like a very different INTZ Red. But they played game 2 really well. I was actually very impressed.
So. We talked about draft phase in game one. In game two, how did you feel about CNB's composition? And so just running through it real quick, it's the Rek'Sai top, it's the Gragas jungle, Kassadin mid, and then the Urgot Alistar bot lane. And for CNB, what are your thoughts on that composition in general?
So for this draft, for me, the thing that struck me like was really weird was firstly the blind pick LeBlanc, which was I don't know, was so weird. And then CNB answers with Urgot Gragas, which is a really good rotation. And second rotation, INTZ Red goes Hecarim. Now, usually one of the picks that avoids seeing the Hecarim on the other side is actually the Urgot because he doesn't get blown up by a Hecarim engage as the other AD carries. And he can also, once Hecarim gets in range, if he's not going too fast, he can just swap him in and just make Hecarim useless. So again, both games with a weird draft. The Rek'Sai top is something that I was not expecting other teams to do. We may or may have not been practicing it.
Wow.
But
wasn't expecting other teams to do it. We may or may not have been practicing. Okay. No, yeah, K-Star's definitely no practice in the Rek'Sai.
Rek'Sai Banzing. No, it's just an elaborate plan. But I'm not sure if I like it with Ignite's teleport. I think Smite TP is superior.
Yes.
Thank you. And this is because she's a very good jungler, and this gives Rek'Sai top the option of playing out the lane swap and playing the 2v1 very well. So, yeah, I would have liked to see her with Smite. I do understand the idea behind Ignite. You want to lane 1v1 versus the Hecarim and try to kill him. But instead, you can just go Smite and you swap. And obviously the Hecarim, if he's smart and he runs Smite, he'll lead the jungle. But when he comes to lane, the 2v1, I think the Rek'Sai is superior. And then Rek'Sai is also a very good split pusher.
And I also, for me on the Smite versus Ignite, I just feel like Ignite is all about like snowballing the early game, and it's just such a gamble, whereas Smite is like
guaranteed.
Yeah, it's just guaranteed late game scaling because challenging Smite even post nerf is still busted. Like the damage reduction is still insane, and on top of that, Cinderhulk is just incredibly strong as an item.
If you want to see a really good execution of it, watch the first game of WE Invictus Gaming. And true, like it's against a Luca, so you know, Zatai is probably going to win that lane anyway. But I thought Zatai did a really good job of using that top.
Did
lane.
he go Smite or did he go Ignite?
Yeah.
He went Smite?
Pretty sure he went Smite. Let me double check, but I'm like 90% sure he did. Yeah.
I think that was the only set I didn't see. One of the only sets I didn't see in China. But something I like about the Smite Rek'Sai is you can do this build where you go Cinderhulk into Black Cleaver, the new one, and it's extremely good. Like you get 20% CDR.
Yeah,
you get the extra movement speed.
He went Cinderhulk, Black Cleaver.
It's such a strong 2-item power spike. It's ridiculous.
I just think Cinderhulk.
And then Cacao was on Eve. It was actually a really good combination.
I just think Black Cleaver is incredibly strong. I think Cinderhulk is incredibly strong, and I think the fact that new Black Cleaver is built entirely out of health in a Cinderhulk meta is insane.
Yep. Like, if you can combine those items, you get very good stats. Cinderhulk with Black Cleaver with a Cinderhulk means it's a 500 health item because of the 25% extra. And then the armor shred it brings you, if you can combine that with other sources of AD, it's very strong. So if you can combine that, for example, with a hyper carry, it's very strong. For example, in this case, they only had Urgot, so not the best example. But by itself, the item is strong. But I like to see it. If you're going to run Black Cleaver on a top laner, if you can have a hyper carry on that team composition, it's very strong. Like if you can have a Jinx with that Rek'Sai or with that Gnar, because Gnar is very good with the Black Cleaver, it's definitely something to be very scared of.
We'll have to see if there's some adaptations to that in the future, or if CNB, if they keep picking the Rek'Sai top, decide to stray towards Ignite. So before we move on to other regions, thoughts on Red, INTZ Red, and CNB in general. Do you feel, Shaka, personally, like they do represent kind of where the rest of Brazil is at as a region, or do you feel like there's multiple tiers here. It's not just INTZ, Keat Stars at the top and everyone else, or is there like multiple different levels where it's like INTZ and Cade Stars are going to be at the top, and then maybe it's like Pain Gaming and Kaboom Black in the middle. Never mind. I don't know. What are your thoughts on CNB and INTZ, Red?
So Nugan is gonna be happy because I'm gonna praise CNB here a bit. I know he's a huge fan of Napon.
Yes, I am.
I do think predicting like the regular split finishes, I definitely think that CNB is going to be top 4. And this is not only based on this series, because they obviously dropped a game, but I feel like they're doing pretty well in scrims. I'm not going to say results or anything, but I feel like they're doing well in scrims, and they show a lot of promise. They still do kind of some novice mistakes, but then again they changed. It was Yoda and Skyer, right? It was only those two. I'm not missing anyone else. Yeah. They also have the other AD carry, whose name I can't remember. They have a 6-man roster. We scrimmed with both AD carries. I actually think the other guy's better, but Skyer is good. Yoda is showing some promise, and I think that this team, by the end of the regular split, will place top 4. So my top 4 predictions are Keed, Pain, INTZ, and CNB. And not sure between Pain and INTZ where they'll place, but I think that CNB is going to be above the rest of the teams and above the Kaboom teams. And Red is the kind of team that can pull some upsets. They're very interesting. Obviously, they lost Alox, but I think Ariane can do a good job. And I can see this as a team that can either they'll do pretty well from themselves and take some games from teams, or they'll end up being in relegation spots, because the league is only 8 teams, so there's only so many spots to land in, you know. And obviously, we didn't talk mentioning the other teams. I think Generation 3 is the other team that can upset a lot, because they're looking pretty good.
Noogs, what are your thoughts on CNB and your boy Napon?
Well, right now I think CNB is in a decent spot. I mean, I know that they lost Kalik as their AD. He wasn't necessarily the strongest AD carrier, but he was a pretty good and important part of how the team functioned. At least that's how Emily explained it to me when I was learning about CNB. But the reason why I'm such a big fan of Napon is because I think he's actually very good in terms of like mechanics and whatever. But he's also, when I watch their games, I get the sense that he's like, when they win, it's when Napon's able to create a lot of pressure on the map, because he will almost always have a near like 80 to 100% kill participation, because like when he gets rolling, he makes all these like plays when he needs to be. Like he's always where his team needs him to be. And I don't know his comms, I don't know anything of like that aspect or anything about it, but to be able to consistently perform, be at that level of contribution to your team's victory all the time is pretty damn awesome. Like, I think Napon's awesome. Like, huge fanboy.
All right, Napon is awesome. I like it. So, any other comments, Emily? Any of your thoughts? I guess you said you think that these guys are like the best of the rest as far as BR goes.
I would agree with that.
All right. Well, now we're officially done with CB Law.
Okay, I'm done. Bye, guys.
Bye. Farewell, Choco. You said you watched almost every Chinese game, so I'm going to need you at least for one more section.
Yeah, I watched today between scrims, the games I had missed.
See, he's just not interested because the other regions don't play Cal.
Yeah. I really liked ADG because Ray played Kale.
Oh, that's true.
Well, now he's on UDG now, so...
Yeah, and he won't play because I think Amazing J will play over Ray for sure.
Well, he did play Garen.
Oh my god.
Oh my god, never bring up the Garen. I forgot about the Garen.
That
Yeah,
was my favorite
about
game.
the
To be
Garen.
you
honest.
wanted to.
Oh, I wanted
You
to
wanted
be...
to.
To
I
be
don't know
honest,
if
that
you
was my
guys
favorite
know.
game, just because Garen. But
a fun fact. I don't know if you guys know, but Vizicachi, the top laner for UOL, pretty much spammed like Garen TP Smite top lane for like 4 days on stream, and he was like, it was ridiculous. The man was like destroying everyone. It was really good. It was really fun to watch TP Smite Garen, but I feel like we won't see it in the LCS stage. But you never know with UOL.
I never want to hear about Smite TP Garen top ever again. Those words are ever spoken. All right. For those of you who didn't get to watch the game last season where Amazing J picked Garen top, I forgot that was Amazing J. I tried to forget. There's a wonderful GIF somewhere that I'm sure Kelsey or someone else can provide you of Garen just spinning in place on top of a Kog'Maw as the Kog'Maw takes no damage and kills him very quickly. And I feel like that's an accurate summary of how I feel about Garen top. But Amazing J now on the EDG lineup. Koro no longer the starter due to some drama. Contract stuff is what I've heard. I'm not 100% sure on that. But what are your guys' thoughts on Amazing J on EDG? And from these first week of games, what did you see? How do you feel about Amazing J?
I do want to say that the Koro thing, like the official line from the team and from Koro is that he's just been benched and that EDG is trying to develop their other talent is what they've said. Amazing J is not Koro, and very few people are Koro. But I mean,
just need you to stay for
You really
that.
want to put it that way?
like it's really hard to replace Koro in terms of what he did for that team. Like, and not just in like, not even in lane. Like his laning phase is just monstrously improved from the last year, but in terms of dictating how a team fight works as it's happening, Amazing J has absolutely none of that. And so in terms of like replacing, like you could see it in the game they lost to Vici. Like there are just some points in team fights where Amazing J is just like off in the middle of nowhere, and you're like, "What are you doing, buddy? Like, why are you over there? What are you up to?" He's just not going to have that same team fight presence. Can he learn? Maybe. I don't really like. I mean, like I ranted about this on China Talk, so I won't get that much into it here. But like, I don't like rotating rosters. Like I watched SK Telecom try it, Korea, and I feel like they still had the best in terms of like what they wanted to do with that rotating roster. But then once it got to MSI, they lost to an EDG that was a unit of 5, and they became a unit of 5 by playing together through a grueling, ridiculous season of Chinese League of Legends. So I respect the fact that EDG wants to develop their talent. I respect the fact that they want to try playing Amazing J, but I just don't agree with it.
And to add to your point, I feel like the games don't really show if Amazing J is good or not, because they were what's the name of the team? Fuck, I always forget. Who did EDG play?
Vici?
Yeah.
What?
They played Vici, and then was it just Vici?
No, it wasn't just Vici.
No, they also played
they
definitely not Starhorn Royal Club.
Yeah.
Okay. They played
fine.
King. They played King. I was not sure. Yeah, but in the games versus King, you saw like a team with 3 subs and then 2. And I don't know, it was just stomps. Like that Fizz game was just a stomp, and I don't even really like the build. It's so weird, like Cinderhulk Fizz that doesn't go tank, so he doesn't really
play to the Rune King Triforce. Was that what it
Yep.
was?
Yeah, he doesn't really get anything from that Cinderhulk except for the damage reduction smite.
Which you don't need to build Cinderhulk for.
Yeah, you could just keep it without an enchant, and skip the item and just go for the rest. I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know. Like the games are so stompy that you can really see if Amazing J is any good or not. But as Emily said, I mean, at least for me, because I haven't seen enough of Amazing J. But as Emily said, you just don't replace like the best top laner in the world.
It's like SKT being like, Faker, we're not going to play you in this set. We've
No,
decided
it's worse. It's worse. I feel like it's worse because at least they have Easy Hoon.
No, Easy Hoon is such a better player than Amazing J. What are you talking about, Daniel?
No,
Holy
no, yeah.
shit.
Don't you compare them, Dan? What? As much as I
No,
love the Garen game, but we're going a little far here. What? Excuse me?
All right. I love Easy Hoon. Let's not. You're right. I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
Not saying, like, okay,
I brought
just,
it to the Hoon, and that was rude.
I
because
just
I
got
love the Hoon.
finished saying that I didn't like rotating rosters, even though that happened. But like, Easy Hoon could legit be a starting mid on any team. Amazing J, in my opinion, what he brings to team fights is not equivalent in any way.
But
Even his laning is kind of suspect at times.
right? No? At least he's not a Luca. That's not a valid point for choosing the top laner. Okay.
We
All right.
had to go there.
So EDG, let's assume that they stick with Amazing J. Do you think they're still a world caliber team? Do you think they still can be? Or is Koro just too big of a piece of the puzzle? With where Amazing J is at now, let's say. Like, how important is Koro to the EDG lineup?
So like Amazing J doesn't improve, he just stays. And then they're not the best team in the world anymore.
Yeah, they might not be the best team in China. I don't know. China's too random to predict.
That's fair.
They just
Okay.
lost so much without Koro, so I pretty much agree with that.
Koro is the team fight god.
I mean, you're already seeing what happens, for example, to LGD when they don't have PYL.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's touch on that's another one that I wanted to touch on was LGD without PYL. I mean, it feels like we're losing a lot of these players.
it's temporary. At least this one we know it's temporary.
Mhm.
Because it was due to surgery, I believe, plastic surgery.
Yeah, plastic surgery.
Okay,
He has a really bad underbite, so it was to fix his jaw. It was to put his jaw back in place.
I was hoping he was just going to come back with a completely new face, like sexy new PY.
no,
If that was the case, I'm pretty sure he could have walked on stage all in bandages, like a mystery man, and played.
I mean, it is China too, so really, if anything, like if he
could
came
have
back
pulled
with
a
a new
pawn.
face,
He could have pulled a pawn.
no, he could have come back. We could have come back with just a completely new face and pretended he was a new player, and they would have been like, who did they get? Where did they get this mystery player from? Anyway, so looking at China, one of the big talking points is China is kind of known for using early season because they have such a long season. Emily brought it up earlier to kind of mess around, to kind of experiment with new things. Obviously, for EDG, it means a new roster. For other teams, it means slightly different things. For definitely not Starhorn Royal Club, also known as King, I don't know what it means. It's interesting. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on the first week of China overall? And do you think that there are any big implications here? And if so, on what teams?
I think it's too early to tell because it's such a long season. I feel like definitely what you said, teams are going to use it because they know that like dropping some games is not like the end of the world. It's not like Brazil where you only have 8 weeks and you only and if you drop games, it's gonna affect your standings a lot. So I feel like some teams are going to do a lot of experimenting and see what fits best. But it's kind of frustrating to see as well because you can't gauge the teams correctly.
Mhm.
You know, so
I think that's fair. Does anyone? I know this is kind of a brief summary of China, but I really feel like it can't be said enough that this is just week 1 for China. And unlike BR, as you just said, these games just don't mean as much. And China has a reputation for kind of using these games more liberally to experiment, to try new things in the early weeks. Dade especially is known for liberally
Oh,
experimenting for
holiday.
the first
If
number of
experimenting
weeks.
is the word you want to use, I guess we can go
Well,
with that.
yeah, we're gonna go with
Thought
experimenting.
I counterpicked himself in Korea too. Don't
Yeah,
act
I
like it
know.
didn't happen.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I think the most interesting thing to come out of week one. Again, I saw.
Face Snake.
Yeah, I said this on China
Yeah.
Talk, but I think in terms of using the first week as an experimentation period, I think Team Snake is actually doing a surprisingly good job. I feel like in the off season they did a pretty good job of addressing one of their huge weaknesses, which is the champion pool of their mid laner, and picking up just an incredible upgrade in EDG's mid lane sub U. And previously he was on the team last year for like the really godly 2014 iteration of EDG with Name. And I think that Snake, as much as I rag on them for Crystal, I think that they've done a really good job of looking at their team and saying, okay, what went wrong last year? So Snake came out of the gate and they were really strong because they knew who they were, and they knew how to use their strengths to leverage their weaknesses. Now, teams obviously caught on to that by the end of the season, and by the time they went to playoffs, they did not have that same luxury because they basically built their entire team around putting Crystal on a hyper carry and then keeping him safe, and then hopefully Baka gets Xerath or Azir.
Oh my god. And hopefully no one bans Nunu or J4.
Yeah,
and camps
exactly.
Crystal.
Exactly. Like, so it was very obvious to the team had very obvious weaknesses. They did not look good in playoffs. And I think over the off season and during these first two their performances this first week, I think they've done a pretty good job of addressing what they need to fix, or like showing that they know where their weaknesses are that they need to correct before the next playoff season, so that doesn't happen again. So they're not as easily banned out. And I still like Martin better than Crystal. Like in the off season, I thought he did a better job in the AD carry position, but Crystal played all of the games that Snake was in, and he did okay. He was on Sivir and Urgot, which is something we haven't seen from him. So I think
He hadn't played Urgot before, had he?
And his record on Sivir was not good. It was like a 1-3 or something.
Yeah, he really only plays hyper carries. Because that's all we've seen him be successful on, at least. I'm interested to see what happens. I don't know. Crystal is bad.
I want to see that team in the top. I don't know. I find them really interesting because I like seeing you play.
Yeah. That's why I'm interested in Snake now, because he was playing.
I think it's crazy to me that a team did so well for so long with such huge glaring weaknesses, and now the fact that they're coming back and trying to fix them. I mean, that's a narrative I can get behind.
Says the Snake fan who liked it for Crystal.
I didn't like it for Crystal.
Sure.
I liked it because they did dumb shit and they won, and it was really obvious how to ban them out, and teams still took forever to figure it out. That was sweet for me to watch, because it's always like, are they going to ban Jarvan and Nunu, or is Snake going to win? And that was every game.
So
like,
this is purely entertainment value.
I mean, yes. Like, why else would I be a fan? Isn't being a
He's
fan
a
about
CLG fan.
Is it about the
that's a good
He's already
point.
lost.
the housewives of CLG?
How can any
Of course.
CLG fan hate entertainment?
well,
We've
see,
gotten
and
so
we've
much
ended up
entertainment.
somehow we've ended up back at CLG, and this is all how every show goes.
I
So-
swear you do this on purpose. You
I'm-
set it up.
You set yourself up, man.
Well,
You just find the teams that'll give you the most entertainment. And you're like, I can do this. I got this.
Yeah, I mean that's what I mean, like, I'm just not. I don't know. Anyway, yes, Snake fan. Really hope that they do well. Hope that Crystal learns how to play something that isn't a hyper carry, and if not, I would be happy to see Martin come in. I think he's talented, like you said, from what we've seen in the off season, and I think it would be good for Snake to branch out. And I think you is an excellent pickup. So, with China experimenting so much in the early weeks, it seems that Korea has started to do the same, or at least that's what it feels like after watching these first week of games, and the big one that we're going to talk about. So we're going to skip around a little bit because Najin is my team to watch for this week, just because they had such an interesting set of games. Shaka's rolling his eyes back in the back of his head. Najin beat Ku Tigers.
Yeah, they also lost to Anarchy.
Yeah, we're going to get to that one second because this is hard for me to talk.
Mickey God.
Mickey God.
All right, Noogs. Let's start Anarchy Najin. What were your thoughts on the Anarchy Najin set? From
Anarchy
what you saw?
Najin was pretty damn disappointing because I guess okay. I guess the biggest gripe, the thing that stuck in my mind the most after that set is game 1, because yeah, Najin won that game, right? But honestly, any lead or disadvantage they ever got in that game was dictated by Anarchy. Anarchy either threw the game or took it in their own hands. Like, the only lead Najin deserved or got on their own was Duke dumpstering Ikusu, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, dumpstering him so hard in 1v1 lanes all 3 games, right? That was the only lane that I thought was like
player, not wrestler.
earned or not given to them by the other team. It was just so disappointing.
Okay, so in the Anarchy set, do we? I guess let's start with Anarchy. We kind of wanted to start with Najin, but let's talk about Anarchy. So Anarchy, obviously, Nugan said they played well the whole set. Would you guys agree? Do you think Anarchy is kind of or did outplay Najin?
I didn't necessarily say they played well, but
they played better than Najin.
Which isn't hard, considering Najin is so inconsistent.
Yeah.
I would say that Anarchy, I think, again, if you have a team like that, they're kind of like, you can't, I feel like they came in, and even in the promotion tournament, this was not the team that was expected to make it through.
Yep.
And they did, and you're like, whoa, they don't even have a support staff. They don't have a coach. They don't have a sponsor. They're showing up in white polos, and hopefully they all match. You know,
they don't have a house.
Yeah, they're just. I want to say, maybe that's incorrect. I don't want to say anything's incorrect. I was going to say I want to say they did get one, but regardless, compared to Najin EM Fire, they don't have
anything.
the same amount of support. And to see a team, and Nugan's like, I'm going to make Nugan cry, to see a team like Anarchy take out Najin EM Fire is should honestly be embarrassing for Najin. Like, it really, really should. Because they should not be dropping games to a team like this based on the resources and the staff that they have at their disposal. And that's not to say anything bad against Anarchy, because I actually like watching them this first week has been the most exciting.
I actually like
the most exciting thing to watch. I kind of love them. Like, obviously never as much as KT Rolster, but like I really enjoyed watching Anarchy play, and I feel like if there was one constant across all of the Anarchy games, is that they are not afraid. Like, they're not one of these teams that comes in and is overwhelmed in the spotlight. They have a couple of experienced players. Obviously, Mickey God is a sore spot to some people I know because of his like kind of off and on performance in China. Lyra is someone who I'm familiar with from when he was on KT Rolster like a while ago. Mm-hmm. He also went to China and now returning. He was on CJ Entis for like a matter of like months when they were going through that weird transitory period on Frost where like they didn't even know what was going on. And so like I'm really happy to see Lyra find a home, because he was part of teams that just weren't very successful, and I honestly wasn't too impressed with him when I saw him previously in Korea, but then I felt like he was kind of, in my opinion, like obviously Mickey is the star, right? Like the breakout star of this team that everyone's looking at. They're like, oh my gosh, who is this kid? But I'd encourage people to pay attention to how Lyra dictates the pace of the early game, where he goes, where he ganks, I feel like he knows pretty well how to snowball his team's advantages, and so I was pretty impressed with him, especially in the first game that they played against CJ Entis. And I think Anarchy, they will get figured out because like I said, they don't have the resources that other teams do have unless they get a big sponsor. And so they won't have as much, they just won't be able to develop as quickly as other teams will. And I think teams will be able to figure them out. And obviously they know now, or they should. Hopefully we won't have another snake situation where people just obviously don't ban the picks that will shut a team down. Like, I think there are pretty easy ways to shut down Anarchy, and I think CJ Entis did a pretty good job of showing that when they weren't, like putting space on Vayne. Like, what, why? Yeah. Like space of all people on Vayne. No,
it was for me. For me, it was hilarious because I woke up that day. I woke up pretty late because I'm watching streams until like 2 a.m. But I wake up that day. I open up my laptop, and Mickey got his like 3-0 on Zed, and I look at the score and it's like 1-1, and I'm like, is this gonna happen? And it was so entertaining. And then I just went back and watched game 1 and 2. One thing to mention is that I'm pretty sure that was 5.8 in Korea. And from now on, it's going to be 5.9, which means the Z nerf comes in. And it's a pretty significant nerf. For those of you who are not aware, he takes 1 second. He needs 1 second to go back into his initial
swap back to the initial shadow from Deathmark, the starting location. Yeah.
So this takes a lot of playmaking potential from Zed. He's very easy to telegraph. His moves are very easy to telegraph. He can't use his ult defensively because it's also used defensively sometimes as an escape to avoid skill shots. You use it to avoid skill shots, and then you're stuck there 1 second before you can go back. So, for example, the Zed Ahri matchup where the Ahri can usually get the charm off. Now she'll be able to do it consistently because it's so telegraphed. And that's only one example. So I think that's a really big hit to Mickey God's champion pool because he's exceptional on that Zed. And it's really going to change the dynamic of the champion. I don't know if we're even going to see him in competitive. I guess we might see him, but nearly not as much.
I think because of the nerfs, a lot of people are less likely to even risk a lot because that's huge, as you already explained.
Yep.
I think. Oh God, I don't know. So I play a lot of Zed. I haven't in a while, but in the previous season I played Zed almost nonstop. It's definitely one of my favorite champions to play. And so keep in mind, my opinion, worth almost nothing as a non-professional player, but Deathmark is without a doubt, I think, the most important ability in his kit, and to have that nerfed in such a way I don't think the champion's viable anymore. Realistically, I think he had limited applications in the tank meta. Very limited, like ridiculously limited applications, namely just as a counter to Azir, right? As one of the few champions that can reliably kill Azir at level 6. And so to take out, to limit the most important part of his kit in that fashion, I think removes him from viability almost completely, if not 100%.
Yeah, we won't see him as much, and that hits our Anarchy pretty hard. Because they're very dependent on Mickey God being on one of his top champions, and I feel like if you just want to take games from Anarchy, you ban Mickey God out. It's really simple.
And I don't know. We'll have to see. So obviously, coming up. Dang it! How am I gonna say this? Okay, so. Now we had this interesting point. So if you guys didn't know already, the show is pre-recorded. We're trying something new. I was going to mention that at the start of the show, and then I realized we didn't. And then we have this segment where we were going to talk about the games that are happening tonight. But technically, if this show's tomorrow, they happened last night or in the next couple of hours from when we're recording. So Anarchy is playing Jin Air tonight. And for these matches and for Anarchy, I think Emily set it up as like this is the moment where we figure out if Anarchy's actually good, right? If they keep winning. How do you think we will see Zed bans from the side of Jin Air? Do you think that's something that we're going to see, or is Jin Air kind of sleeping on these guys?
Yeah, I think we might see it. If they want to play safe, I definitely say they want to ban it. You could argue, oh, they might bait the pick, but there's not many picks that just destroys that in lane. So I feel like it's the best option is to ban it. Also, before we talk about the matches happening that are going to happen, I just wanted to mention how KOO Tigers looked. They looked horrible. What a disappointment.
Well, we were going to talk about Najin, and then we talked about Anarchy, and I feel like Anarchy has a much better storyline, despite the fact that I was excited that Watch did something. That's right, Watch did something. Something. Not amazing. Something. And that's cool, because Watch didn't do anything in the last split. All right, so KOO Tigers. Let's talk about KOO Tigers versus Najin. Let's combine here, because I obviously want to talk about Najin. You obviously want to talk about KOO. So what was out of place for KOO Tigers?
They look lost.
I don't think they knew the patch that well.
Yeah. I didn't like either of their junglers.
No, that's what I'm saying. They don't have I think Lee is going to be one of those junglers who you heard. I don't know if you saw the pregame trash talk. If you watched, I don't know if you watched it live or if you watched the VODs. But the pregame trash talk prior to the KOO Tiger, or at that time GE Tigers versus SK Telecom, and Tom basically says he's like, oh yeah, I have Lee's number. Lee's a jungler who has just definitely been figured out, I think, by a lot of people. So, and I don't think that Wisdom is
I didn't like that.
Horrible, but I don't think that he's there, and I think for GE, swapping out players might be a little bit more difficult for that team, just based on how they played previously last split. They really relied on being a unit of 5 that, all were really on the same page, even though they did have obvious weaknesses. And so I think especially, I know I keep harping on this, but the jungle position is just so freaking important in Season 5. It's important always, but even more so in a more team, as you watch the progression of League of Legends competitively, it becomes more and more of a team, or it has anyway. It becomes more and more of a team game every year, and so the jungle position is just such a huge important part in dictating the pace of the early game, setting up your entire game plan all goes through your jungler. And if you don't have that as a strong thing, and if you're adjusting to a new one, it's going to affect your team. And I think I don't want to say that KOO was a meta team or a patch team, but right now it certainly looks like it, because it's kind of similar. It's similar, but less of a drop off, to be honest, than what we saw from Jin Air last split, where there was a point when
they didn't win any game after Cinderhawk.
5.5 hit, and they just did not know what to do, at all. Their drafts were horrible. They looked lost. It was miserable to watch. It broke my heart, honestly, because they'd been such a successful team and coming up with these game plans and swapping out their players and using GBM as this point person. He was a hugely improved player, and I still stick by that assertion that GBM is still a hugely improved player. But after a certain point, they looked lost, and it's not as steep of a drop-off, but honestly, KOO, after a certain point last split, they didn't look as good, and then they tried some funky things to, adjust their early game, but then when they brought those things into the final against SK Telecom, they didn't execute them well at all, that funky Aurelia pick on Smeb, and it's just, it's going to be really difficult for them going forward if they don't figure it out. And I honestly think that Kuro is also a player that we've brought up before on the show that you kind of have to take a look at and be like, is he up to the level of competition in Korea? And
Nope.
I'm pretty, yeah, and I've harped on Najin for playing their subs, but Goong is not a bad player. Goong is a specific player, but Goong is not a bad player. He has, however, he only usually does well on like really specific champions. And if Kuro is looking not that great against Goong, then he's going to have some issues because
I mean,
like
he's gonna get wrecked.
Like Goong, let me double check. He played Ari all three games.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Kuro did not, I mean, in my opinion, didn't look good against him on any of the picks he had. Vladimir, he did have the Kassadin, obviously. That was the one game that they won. And then the Lulu. And it just, if you're losing to Goong on Ari, I feel like it's also time, like, and again, I feel like that sounds really mean towards Goong, but it's not meant to be. He's an older player, he works really hard, and he's good on really specific champions. As a mid laner on a premier team, a team that was number one for all of last season, right? You need to step it up. And I think Kuro is a huge weak link. The jungle they might be able to figure out. I'm not as down as on Wisdom as some people. I actually liked him previously when he was on IM. And I thought that, I forget, he left the team, I think, for, I mean, someone can correct me when they watch this VOD. I thought he might have left the team for personal reasons.
I mean,
he left partway through the season, and I don't think he was replaced because he was actually not doing poorly, like super poorly on the team, in my opinion. So I mean,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I'm not as hugely down on him, but it would take some adjusting to get used to a new jungler. But I think he has the talent if they can nurture it. I'm not sure if Kuro is, necessarily has talent. Honestly.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of wanted to. I'm not sure if it's too late for the. What I wanted to say was when you're talking about Lee, like that he was weakening his position.
Shocking dramatic door sounds in the background.
Sounds like
it's
someone's getting flushed down the toilet or something.
It's an airlock.
I don't know why my grandmother is awake at 4 a.m., but okay.
What I was gonna say was like a lot of, especially Emily's right. Like in this season, jungler is like even more and more important. Like you can see that in MSI, especially, right? Like over the finals of like a lot of the regions, like a lot of the junglers did dictate the pace, right? Like I'm about to make the most Raz level tier of analogy, so try not to get too lost. So okay. I'm likening the jungler position to the main character, like you as a player when you play Dynasty Warriors, right? So like the reason hold on, it makes sense. All right, just give me a second. All right. So for Dynasty Warriors, it's basically one side versus the other side. It's hack and slash game, like war, history, reference, whatever, all that garbage. And all your generals will lose your positions on their map if you literally don't go out and babysit them there the entire time. And that's not to say that every jungler has to babysit all their lanes, but it's like you are that integral to your team now in this meta. In this season, if you have to be like that important to your team to have any kind of like chance of succeeding at an international level or even dominating your region. And I don't think Lee, or I think he's going by Hojin now because they're asking him to change his name because the Creamcasters get confused when Lee Sin's in the game or something. But Lee or Hojin needs
Yeah, they
to
did.
really, really step up this game because it just won't fly
All right.
anymore.
Okay, so here's my thing. For those of you who have played Dynasty Warriors, you're probably just as surprised as I am that he made that reference. Because in Dynasty Warriors, you're literally like the thousands of people you kill in any given Dynasty Warriors game is the impressive stat. Not like 5. It's not like 5 dudes.
I'm not even talking about the kill
You're
count,
like
man.
hacking through millions of people, and I think Cinderhulk
I'm talking
is
about the
strong,
fact
but
that
I don't think it's that
your
strong.
generals, your ally generals are actually like useless, and they will lose any and all stronghold and positions on your map if you don't help them at all.
I think that sets up that puts a lot of pressure on our jungler. But
I just wanted to say 2 things about Coup Tigers. The first is the jungler. Lee is so figured out that he name changed again. That's how he figured out he is Kappa. And Coup actually literally sounds like ass in Portuguese. We spell it differently, but it's exactly the same sound. So whenever I hear the name of the team, I just laugh
Ass
like
Tigers.
like a 5-year-old. Because I'm that
hell.
mature.
all right. Well, the Ass Tigers aren't playing tonight. It's
See how stupid that sounds?
All right, I
KT
think that's-
versus CJ.
I think that's gonna be a meme
and
from now on. Congratulations.
It's KT versus CJ and Jin Air versus Anarchy, and we talked a little bit about Jin Air versus Anarchy. As a panel, do we expect Anarchy to keep winning games? And obviously, once this goes live, we'll already know if we're wrong or not.
Nope.
You don't expect Anarchy to keep winning games? All right.
I think Pilot played pretty well in the. Who did they play?
I am.
Yeah, I think Pilot played pretty well. GBM can definitely hold his own against Mickey God, and I think they have the better players in each position. So, yeah, Jenner is gonna take that win.
All right. And then anyone else? Jin Air? Emily, Jin Air or
I agree, Jenner. I think it's based on how the 2 teams are designed, though, when it comes down to the Mickey GBM matchup. And I haven't seen a lot out of Mickey that would suggest that he'd be able to rival the champion pool that GBM is able to bring to the table. And I know the way and the reason why I kind of really loved what Jin Air was doing last split until they obviously kind of shot the bed after Cinderhulk was that they were designing all of these team compositions around GBM, but they would play like different combos of their bot lane, whether they wanted GBM to play more aggressively or more passively, and depending on what champion he was playing. And I thought it was a really clever use of how they know their players' strengths and weaknesses and who they're expecting to kind of carry from that team. Obviously, like Trace is an incredible player. He can carry. As Shaka said, Pilot played really well in the games against IM. And I think it's going to come down to the fact that Chaser finally seems okay on more comfortable.
That build up. He's finally
Yeah.
okay.
Well, because like over
All right.
the last season, it was like, oh, we're gonna take the regular season and they'll figure it out by then. Oh, they'll figure it out in the playoffs. And no, they didn't do that. They still look terrible. So Chaser played Gragas and Sejuani. He looked like so much more like his old self, and I think Lyra is a good jungler. I think I was actually pretty impressed with his performances, but I just think it's going to come down to Mickey and GBM, and
it's fair. Nugan,
Jenner.
what are your thoughts?
I think
Jin Air.
Jenner is not going to take them lightly, especially after last week. And I just mean like in the sense that they're not going to throw away the match, like they're not going to underprepare or anything. I don't think they're that conceitful or anything like that. And I think Jenner definitely has the tools to overcome Anarchy's team fighting for basically any reason that Emily said, because I completely agree with her on this.
Final game, final predictions for the show for this week. KT versus CJ. Once again, let's start with Shaka.
Hmm. I liked KT. I think they played well. But I'm gonna give it to CJ. I think they're the better team.
All right.
I think Coco's an extremely good player, and the roster overall was really, really solid. As long as you don't put Space playing Vayne, it should be fine. So yeah, I think they're gonna beat KT, but it might just be a 2-1. It might be close.
That's fair. Emily.
Well, you know who I hope wins.
KT. I know.
Yeah, that's
Obviously.
not obvious from whoever is in your picture. Right.
Um,
We'll take that as a vote for KT.
I think
Nougat.
no. Wait, hang on. I have something to say. I think that for KT, their weakest points definitely their bot lane. Like, Arrow still has a lot of CSing issues and a lot of trading issues, but he's going. I mean, here's the thing: he's going up against Space, who is not the most aggressive or impressive laner. Even though I do think he's improved, I think he's more decisive. It's really going to come down to, I think, if CJ can get that lead in the bot lane, and then the Coco versus Nagane, KT basically has to come up with a lot of really quick, decisive early game rotations from Score to overcome the fact that CJ, I think, is generally a stronger team across the board at this point. Aside from Score, I still maintain that Score is better than Ambition. Sorry, guys.
Ambition's a god. He can't feed First Blood anymore, and he's now ascended to his final form. I don't know what you're talking about. Nougat. Give me.
I'm definitely rooting for CJ in this one. I do think KT they definitely did look better at the end of last split, so I think they'll put up a pretty good fight against CJ. But I also think CJ has gotten better since then too. I mean, it's only the first week, so that can all change. Coco is very good. Mad Life is starting to step up a little bit more again. For whatever reasons you might want to say it's because all the other good supports are gone, whatever, I don't care. Like, we're only talking about this game, and right now Mad Life looks really, really good. And Ambition looks better. I don't see any reason why he would get worse from last split. Anyway, I think it'll be 2-1 for CJ. I think they'll drop one game.
All right. I don't know. I'm not really invested in either of these teams. I'm going to give it to CJ because I think I haven't been impressed with KT for a long time, and I don't really expect that to change. Anyway, that pretty much closes it out for us this week on that rather anticlimactic note. Korean games will have happened by the time you watch this, so please feel free to berate each and every one of the members of this panel for their predictions. You'll note I didn't give any.
What team do you want to win, Dan?
Oh my god. I want Anarchy CJ. Yeah, Anarchy CJ. But I don't know who's actually going to win. I haven't actually gotten to watch too much Korea. So, once again, thank you to Shaka for coming on so far. If you guys haven't already, please be sure to follow him on Twitter. After working so hard for so long, he finally follows me. Hype. So, Shakarez, Shakarez, in case you can't spell. If you don't follow him already,
It's
pretty
spelled
excellent
right there on the overlay for you, so.
Oh, really? Okay, well, there you go.
Clearly someone doesn't watch our show.
At League of Emily, if you want to follow Emily Rand, she's now a panelist on China Talk. I highly recommend watching it for all information relating to China and for more outlandish metaphors from Razzleplasm, as you got the Raz experience here with Nugan today. Once again, you can follow him. Follow me at LOLCFA. There's no longer an underscore. And of course, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you so much, Shaka, for staying so long, despite the fact that it is ridiculously late or early in the morning for you. And guys, we'll be back next week to talk about these predictions, to talk about more regions too, as NA and EU enter the fray. We'll see you back here next week for episode 31 of Into the Rift.
Bye.
See ya.